The city clinic was already crowded when the sun had just risen high in the sky. People kept walking in and out, carrying files, medical slips, and bottles of water in their hands. The waiting room was full of tired faces. Some patients sat quietly with worry in their eyes, while others spoke softly with their family members. Everyone hoped the long wait would soon be over. Among the many patients sat an elderly woman named Myra. She was in her late 70s and looked fragile but graceful. Her hair was silver, tied neatly in a bun. She wore a simple cotton sari and carried a small handbag that held her medical papers. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the slip that showed her number in line. Mira's breathing was slow, and from time to time she pressed her palm gently against her chest. She had been feeling chest pain for several days, but had delayed visiting the doctor because she did not want to trouble her children. They often told her to rest more, but Myra believed she should manage on her own as much as possible. The clinic had many doctors, but that day, Myra's number led her to Dr. Ramesh, one of the senior physicians. People in the city often described him as strict, short-tempered, and not very kind. Patients who had no choice still came to him because he had years of experience, but most walked out with fear rather than comfort. At exactly 9 o'clock, Dr. Ramesh entered the clinic. He wore a spotless white coat and carried a file tucked under his arm. His steps were quick, and his face showed no smile. The nurses, who were arranging files, stopped talking as soon as he appeared. Even the staff knew that he was not easy to please. Myra waited patiently for her turn. Each minute felt longer as she watched other patients going in and out. When the nurse finally called her number, she stood up slowly, holding her chest for support. Her legs were weak, but she managed to reach the doctor's room. Inside the consultation room, the air was cool from the air conditioner. Dr. Ramesh sat behind a wooden desk, looking at a file. Without lifting his head, he spoke sharply. "What is your problem?" Mira sat down on the chair across from him. Her voice was soft. "Doctor, I have pain in my chest. It comes and goes. Today, it feels stronger. I feel dizzy sometimes, and I thought it may be my heart." At last, Dr. Ramesh looked up, but instead of concern, his face showed irritation. He leaned back in his chair and said, "At your age, pain is normal. Old people always complain about chest pain, weakness, and tiredness. You cannot expect to live without problems when you are 70 plus. Medicine cannot make you young again." The words pierced Myra's heart more than the pain in her chest. She lowered her eyes, trying to remain calm. She hoped he would at least check her blood pressure or ask for a test. With a weak smile, she tried again. "Please, doctor, I only came because I was worried. Could you please check if it is something serious?" But Dr. Ramesh pushed her file aside. His tone grew colder. "I do not have time to waste on small matters. Go home and rest. There are younger patients waiting outside who need my help more than you. Your body is old, and nothing can change that." The nurse standing in the corner felt a sting of guilt as she heard those words. She wanted to step forward and help the old woman, but she knew the doctor disliked interruptions. She stayed silent, though her eyes followed Myra with sympathy. Myra stood up slowly. Her hands trembled as she picked up her handbag. She looked at the doctor one last time, hoping he would change his mind, but he had already turned his eyes back to another file. Without a word, she walked out of the room. Back in the waiting area, Mira sat down on a bench for a moment. She looked tired and disappointed. The people sitting nearby had overheard the exchange and whispered among themselves. Some shook their heads in disbelief. How could a doctor refuse to even check an elderly woman? What no one knew was that in less than 30 minutes, the situation inside the clinic would change completely. The same doctor who had dismissed Mira so coldly would soon face the result of his own behavior. After leaving Dr. Ramesh's room, Mira sat on a wooden bench in the waiting area. Her chest still felt heavy, but the weight of the doctor's words made her heart feel even heavier. She looked down at her lap, clutching her handbag, trying to hide the small tears that formed in her eyes. The waiting room was crowded, and many had overheard the exchange between her and the doctor. People began whispering among themselves. One young man leaned toward another patient and said softly, "How can a doctor speak like that to an old woman? She came here for help." Another woman, who was waiting with her little daughter, shook her head. Doctors are supposed to heal with kindness. If he cannot even listen, then what is the point of his experience? The nurse who had been inside the consultation room came out and glanced at Myra with worry. She walked slowly toward her and whispered, "Auntie, would you like some water? You look very pale." Mira gave a weak smile and nodded. The nurse quickly fetched a glass of water from the cooler and placed it in her hands. Mira sipped slowly, feeling slightly better but still weak. "Thank you, dear," she said softly. The nurse wanted to say more but held her tongue. She knew speaking against Dr. Ramesh could get her into trouble. Still, her heart ached for the elderly woman. Meanwhile, the manager of the clinic, a middle-aged man named Mr. Arjun, had stepped into the waiting room. He often walked around to check if patients were comfortable. As he passed by, he noticed the tense atmosphere and the way people were whispering. He asked a patient sitting near the door, "Is everything all right? Why does everyone look upset?" The man replied quietly, "Sir." The old woman went inside to see Dr. Ramesh. She asked for help, but he refused to treat her. He told her to go home. Arjun frowned. He had heard complaints about Dr. Ramesh before, but never something so direct. He looked at Myra, sitting with her head slightly bowed, and felt concern rise inside him. Just then, a sudden commotion broke out. Mira tried to stand, but her body felt weak. She clutched her chest tightly and sat back down, breathing heavily. The nurse rushed forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Please stay calm, Auntie. Don't move too much. I will call someone to help." The other patient stood up, alarmed. A man quickly gave up his seat so Myra could lie back more comfortably. A woman waved toward the reception desk and said, "Call another doctor quickly. She is not well." The receptionist picked up the phone and dialed one of the junior doctors, Dr. Neil, who had just finished with another patient. Within moments, he hurried into the waiting area with his stethoscope around his neck. His face showed both focus and kindness. He knelt beside Myra and spoke gently. "Mother, do not worry. I will check you right here first." He placed his stethoscope on her chest, listening carefully. Her heartbeat was irregular, and she was struggling to breathe. He immediately knew this was not a matter to delay. "Please help me take her to the examination room," Dr. Neil said firmly. Two patients came forward to assist. They guided Myra slowly while the nurse held her arm. Arjun, the clinic manager, followed behind, his face serious. He had witnessed enough to know that ignoring this situation would not only harm a patient, but also damage the reputation of the clinic. Inside the examination room, Dr. Neil checked Myra's blood pressure, pulse, and oxygen level. He looked at the nurse and said, "She needs urgent attention. This is not just weakness. It could be related to her heart." The nurse nodded quickly and began preparing the necessary equipment. Mira, though tired, looked at Dr. Neil with gratitude. She whispered, "Thank you, son. You are the first one today to listen to me." Dr. Neil gave a small smile. "It is my duty, Mother. Please relax. You are not alone here." Meanwhile, outside in the corridor, patients were talking louder now. The news spread quickly that one doctor had refused to treat an elderly woman and that another doctor had stepped in to help her. The air in the waiting area grew tense, and many people were shaking their heads in disapproval. Mr. Arjun knew this could no longer be ignored. He straightened his shoulders and turned toward Dr. Ramesh's office. His steps were steady, but his mind was filled with determination. It was time to face the doctor who had shown no compassion. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, and as 30 minutes passed, a change was about to sweep through the clinic. A doctor who believed he was untouchable would soon discover that his behavior had consequences. Inside the examination room, Myra lay on a narrow bed while Dr. Neal checked her condition carefully. His hands were gentle, and his voice was calm, which made Myra feel less anxious. The nurse stood beside him, handing him the equipment he asked for. A small machine showed her blood pressure, and another clip on her finger showed her oxygen level. "Mother," Dr. Neal said softly, "your heartbeat is not steady, and your blood pressure is low. You must rest for now. I will arrange a test for your heart today itself." Myra closed her eyes for a moment and whispered, "Thank you, son. I was afraid no one would listen to me." Dr. Neal smiled warmly. "You are safe now. We will take care of you. Please do not worry." The nurse leaned closer to Myra. "Auntie, you are very strong. We will make sure you get proper treatment." Myra gave her a faint smile. The kindness of these young people filled her heart with hope. Meanwhile, outside the room, the waiting area was still full of restless murmurs. People could not stop discussing the difference between the two doctors. Some patients compared Dr. Ramesh's harsh attitude with Dr. Neal's caring nature. A young man said to another, "Did you see how quickly the junior doctor came forward? That is what makes a real doctor. It is not age or years of service, but the heart to serve." Another added, "The old woman could have been in serious danger if he had not stepped in. We should be thankful she is safe now." Mr. Arjun, the manager, stood nearby, listening quietly. He noted every comment. His responsibility was not only to manage the clinic, but also to ensure that patients trusted the place. He knew this incident had shaken that trust, and it was his duty to rebuild it. Inside the small office, Dr. Ramesh sat alone, thinking about what had just happened. He was angry that his authority was being questioned. For years, he had believed his seniority gave him freedom to act however he wished. He thought patients should respect him without asking for kindness. But now, with so many eyes watching, his pride was under threat. Back in the examination room, Dr. Neal finished his checks and wrote down his observations. "Mother, we will shift you to the special ward for a while," he explained. "There you can rest properly, and I will ask for an ECG test. It will help us see how your heart is working." The nurse called 2 attendants, and together they gently moved Myra to the ward. The bed was more comfortable, and sunlight streamed through the window, making the room feel warm. Myra looked around and felt a little more peaceful. Before leaving, Dr. Neal bent down slightly and said, "I will come back after arranging your test. If you need anything, just call the nurse." Myra held his hand for a brief moment. "Bless you, son. May you always remain kind." Her words touched Dr. Neal deeply. He walked out with renewed determination. To him, being a doctor was not only about curing diseases, but also about bringing comfort to people in their most vulnerable moments. In the waiting room, more patients began asking for Dr. Neal. "We want him to treat us," one man said. "He has patience and kindness. That is what we need." The receptionist looked surprised. Usually, patients asked for Dr. Ramesh because of his seniority, but today the atmosphere had completely changed. The receptionist quickly informed Arjun about this unusual demand. Arjun nodded thoughtfully. The picture was becoming clear. The clinic's future could no longer rest on a doctor who lacked compassion. Instead, it would depend on those who showed both skill and heart. By the time the clock struck noon, the story of the elderly woman had already spread outside the clinic. A visitor who had witnessed everything called his brother and told him what had happened. Soon, the tale began traveling through phones and conversations. People in nearby shops and houses heard about the cruel doctor who refused treatment and the kind Junior who saved the day. Inside the clinic, Mira rested quietly in her bed, unaware of how her simple visit was bringing such a big change. For her, all that mattered was that someone had listened, someone had cared. For the clinic, however, this was the beginning of a storm that would decide the fate of a senior doctor who had forgotten the true meaning of service. The afternoon sun streamed through the glass windows of the clinic, casting long shadows on the tiled floor. The waiting room had not calmed down since the morning incident. Patients continued to whisper and discuss what they had witnessed. The story of how Dr. Ramesh refused to treat Mira and how Dr. Neil stepped forward had become the main topic of conversation. A middle-aged man, who had been sitting near the reception, leaned forward and said to another patient, "I came here because I trusted this clinic, but today I feel disappointed. How can a senior doctor ignore someone in need?" Another woman added, "If the junior doctor had not helped, the old woman could have suffered more." This shows us who truly cares for patients. Every few minutes, more patients approached the receptionist, asking if Dr. Neil could see them instead of Dr. Ramesh. The receptionist grew nervous, but kept passing the request to the clinic manager. "Mr. Arjun." Arjun walked through the hall, observing the mood. He could clearly see that trust in Dr. Ramesh was collapsing. Even those who had respected his long experience now looked doubtful. The manager knew he had to make a decision soon. Meanwhile, in his office, Dr. Ramesh sat stiffly, tapping his fingers on the desk. He had heard bits of the commotion outside. His pride told him that patients would forget about it soon, but a small part of him felt uneasy. Still, he convinced himself, "They will always come back to me because I am the most experienced doctor here." At that moment, the nurse entered his office to collect some files. She hesitated before speaking, but then said softly, "Sir, many patients are asking for Dr. Neil instead of you. The waiting room is full of whispers about the incident this morning." Dr. Ramesh frowned. "Nonsense. Patients always complain. They do not understand medicine. They only want sympathy." The nurse lowered her eyes and left quietly, but her silence spoke louder than words. In the special ward, Myra rested on her bed while the nurse checked on her. Her breathing was more stable now, and she felt grateful for the care she was receiving. A few other patients passed by the ward door and looked inside with gentle smiles. They had all seen how bravely Myra had walked out of Dr. Ramesh's office and how kindly she was being treated now. Dr. Neil came in with a file in his hand. "Mother, I have arranged your ECG test," he said. "It will happen shortly. After that, we will know more about your heart condition." Mira nodded slowly. "You have done more for me in 1 hour than the other doctor did in years." "Thank you, son." Her words encouraged him. He gently adjusted her blanket and said, "Please rest. I will return soon." As he left the ward, he saw Mr. Arjun waiting near the door. Arjun gave him a small nod of appreciation. "You did the right thing today, Neil. Not only for the patient, but also for the clinic. People are speaking about your kindness. You have earned their trust." Dr. Neil smiled modestly. "I only did what any doctor should do. Patients come here with hope. It is our duty to honor that." Arjun placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember these words, Neil. They will guide you far in your career." Back in the waiting room, the tension grew heavier. A group of patients now openly refused to see Dr. Ramesh. One man stood near the reception desk and said clearly, "If Dr. Ramesh is the only option, I will take my family elsewhere. We want a doctor who listens." The receptionist looked helpless, but quickly informed Arjun again. By now, Arjun knew this was not a small matter. The reputation of the entire clinic was at stake. If people lost trust in their doctors, the clinic could lose years of hard work. Finally, Arjun decided it was time to take firm action. He called a meeting with 2 senior staff members and explained the situation. We cannot allow a doctor, no matter how experienced, to damage the trust of our patients. If Dr. Ramesh continues, more people will walk away. It is not just about business, it is about humanity. The staff agreed with him. They had seen everything with their own eyes, and they knew the manager was right. As the clock ticked past 3, Arjun walked back to Dr. Ramesh's office with determination. This time, he was not just a manager addressing a doctor. He was the voice of every patient in the waiting room. Every whisper of disapproval and every sigh of disappointment in the ward. Mira closed her eyes and rested, unaware that her courage to ask for help had started a chain of events. Outside her room, the clinic stood on the edge of a major decision, one that would decide whether compassion or arrogance would guide its future. The afternoon sun streamed through the glass windows of the clinic, casting long shadows on the tiled floor. The waiting room had not calmed down since the morning incident. Patients continued to whisper and discuss what they had witnessed. The story of how Dr. Ramesh refused to treat Mira and how Dr. Neil stepped forward had become the main topic of conversation. A middle-aged man, who had been sitting near the reception, leaned forward and said to another patient, "I came here because I trusted this clinic, but today I feel disappointed. How can a senior doctor ignore someone in need?" Another woman added, "If the junior doctor had not helped, the old woman could have suffered more." This shows us who truly cares for patients. Every few minutes, more patients approached the receptionist, asking if Dr. Neil could see them instead of Dr. Ramesh. The receptionist grew nervous, but kept passing the request to the clinic manager. Mr. Arjun. Arjun walked through the hall, observing the mood. He could clearly see that trust in Dr. Ramesh was collapsing. Even those who had respected his long experience now looked doubtful. The manager knew he had to make a decision soon. Meanwhile, in his office, Dr. Ramesh sat stiffly, tapping his fingers on the desk. He had heard bits of the commotion outside. His pride told him the patients would forget about it soon, but a small part of him felt uneasy. Still, he convinced himself, they will always come back to me because I am the most experienced doctor here. At that moment, the nurse entered his office to collect some files. She hesitated before speaking, but then said softly, "Sir, many patients are asking for Dr. Neil instead of you." The waiting room is full of whispers about the incident this morning. Dr. Ramesh frowned. "Nonsense. Patients always complain. They do not understand medicine. They only want sympathy." The nurse lowered her eyes and left quietly, but her silence spoke louder than words. In the special ward, Mira rested on her bed while the nurse checked on her. Her breathing was more stable now, and she felt grateful for the care she was receiving. A few other patients passed by the ward door and looked inside with gentle smiles. They had all seen how bravely Myra had walked out of Dr. Ramesh's office and how kindly she was being treated now. Dr. Neil came in with a file in his hand. "Mother, I have arranged your ECG test," he said. "It will happen shortly. After that, we will know more about your heart condition." Myra nodded slowly. "You have done more for me in 1 hour than the other doctor did in years." "Thank you, son." Her words encouraged him. He gently adjusted her blanket and said, "Please rest. I will return soon." As he left the ward, he saw Mr. Arjun waiting near the door. Arjun gave him a small nod of appreciation. "You did the right thing today, Neil, not only for the patient but also for the clinic. People are speaking about your kindness. You have earned their trust." Dr. Neil smiled modestly. "I only did what any doctor should do. Patients come here with hope. It is our duty to honor that." Arjun placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember these words, Neil. They will guide you far in your career." Back in the waiting room, the tension grew heavier. A group of patients now openly refused to see Dr. Ramesh. One man stood near the reception desk and said clearly, "If Dr. Ramesh is the only option, I will take my family elsewhere. We want a doctor who listens." The receptionist looked helpless, but quickly informed Arjun again. By now, Arjun knew this was not a small matter. The reputation of the entire clinic was at stake. If people lost trust in their doctors, the clinic could lose years of hard work. Finally, Arjun decided it was time to take firm action. He called a meeting with 2 senior staff members and explained the situation. "We cannot allow a doctor, no matter how experienced, to damage the trust of our patients. If Dr. Ramesh continues, more people will walk away. It is not just about business, it is about humanity." The staff agreed with him. They had seen everything with their own eyes, and they knew the manager was right. As the clock ticked past 3, Arjun walked back to Dr. Ramesh's office with determination. This time, he was not just a manager addressing a doctor. He was the voice of every patient in the waiting room. Every whisper of disapproval and every sigh of disappointment in the ward. Mira closed her eyes and rested, unaware that her courage to ask for help had started a chain of events. Outside her room, the clinic stood on the edge of a major decision, one that would decide whether compassion or arrogance would guide its future. Dr. Ramesh sat in his office, staring at the wall. The chatter from the waiting room had grown louder over the past few hours, and he could feel the tension in the air. Patients were now openly refusing to see him, and the whispers of disapproval followed him wherever he went. Pride had always been his shield, but today even that seemed to weaken. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Arjun, the clinic manager, stepped in with a firm expression. "Dr. Ramesh, we need to talk about this morning," he said calmly. Dr. Ramesh leaned back in his chair. "I know what you are going to say. I did nothing wrong." The elderly woman exaggerated her condition. "I only followed my judgment as a senior doctor." Arjun shook his head slowly. "Your judgment may be strong, but your behavior has harmed the trust our patients have in this clinic. Ignoring a patient who needed help is unacceptable, no matter your experience." Dr. Ramesh's eyes narrowed. "I have served this clinic for decades. You cannot question my decisions because one patient was impatient." Arjun's voice remained steady. "It is not impatience. It is care. The patient was in distress." Another doctor, Dr. Neil, stepped in and provided proper attention. "That is what our patients expect from anyone working here." The senior doctor's hands tightened into fists, but before he could respond, Arjun continued. "I have observed the reactions of the waiting room. Patients are refusing to see you. They are asking only for Dr. Neil. This is not a minor issue. The reputation of this clinic is at risk." Dr. Ramesh remained silent, unsure how to reply. For the first time, he felt powerless in front of someone younger and less experienced. Years of authority could not protect him from the truth he had ignored. Arjun leaned closer and spoke firmly. "Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties. You will not treat any patients today. The board will review this matter, and further decisions will be made accordingly." Dr. Ramesh's face turned pale. "Relieved of my duties? Here? Today?" he said, voice trembling slightly. Arjun nodded. "Yes. Patient safety and trust are more important than seniority. You may collect your personal belongings and leave. A replacement will be arranged for your patients immediately." Outside the office, staff members whispered among themselves. Many had never imagined such a decision could be made so quickly. Some smiled quietly, relieved that the clinic would now be safer and kinder for patients. Meanwhile, in the special ward, Mira rested comfortably. Dr. Neil had returned after arranging her ECG test, and the nurse had already helped her settle in. Mira's chest felt lighter, and her mind was calm. She did not know the full story, But she felt relief knowing someone cared for her. Dr. Neil checked her test results and smiled. "Mother, your heart needs monitoring, but everything seems stable for now. We will take proper care of you." Myra smiled back. "Thank you for listening to me, son. Today, I finally felt safe." Back in the waiting area, patients slowly learned about what had happened to Dr. Ramesh. Some had been sitting for hours, observing the change in atmosphere. The moment the manager announced the decision, the whispers turned into quiet applause. People realized that courage, care, and honesty could outweigh years of authority. The nurse came out of the ward and spoke to the patients. "Dr. Neil will continue seeing patients. Everyone will be taken care of with proper attention." A few patients nodded in agreement, relief spreading across their faces. The young man who had criticized Dr. Ramesh earlier said, "Finally, the clinic has shown it cares more about people than pride." Arjun watched quietly, satisfied with the outcome so far. The incident had taught everyone an important lesson. Authority could not replace compassion. A doctor's true value was measured not by years of service, but by how they treated their patients. As the afternoon progressed, Dr. Ramesh packed his belongings. He walked slowly down the corridor, noticing the looks from patients and staff alike. He realized that his pride had cost him more than he expected. His actions had consequences, and for once, he could not escape them. Meanwhile, Mira rested peacefully, unaware of how much her courage had changed the entire clinic. One patient's plea for help had reminded everyone what truly mattered: care, kindness, and listening with the heart. The news of Dr. Ramesh being relieved of his duties spread quickly throughout the clinic. Staff members talked quietly in corners, sharing their thoughts. Patients who had witnessed the morning incident nodded in approval, feeling that justice had been done. The clinic felt lighter somehow, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. In the special ward, Myra was sitting up in her bed, drinking some warm water. Dr. Neil had returned with her ECG results and smiled reassuringly. "Mother, your heart is weak, but with proper care and rest, you will recover well. I will personally check on you every day until you are strong again." Myra's eyes glistened. "Thank you, son. Today, I felt cared for the first time in a long while. I hope all patients can meet doctors like you." Dr. Neil shook his head gently. "All doctors should be like this. It is our duty to listen and help, no matter the age or condition of a patient." Meanwhile, in the reception area, Mr. Arjun was speaking to the staff. "The incident today has taught us an important lesson. Respect and kindness are as important as skill. A doctor may be experienced, but if they cannot show care, they are failing their patients." The staff nodded in agreement. Many of them had been frustrated with Dr. Ramesh's attitude before, but now they saw that change was possible. Arjun decided to hold a short meeting with all the doctors, emphasizing the importance of listening to every patient. Outside the ward, patients were discussing the morning events. Some of them had been waiting for hours and witnessed the entire situation. A young mother said, "We came here trusting Dr. Ramesh, but today we saw who truly cares. Dr. Neil saved the elderly woman's life. That is what matters." A middle-aged man added, "Experience is important, yes, but kindness and attention make a doctor worthy of respect." Today was a clear example. Even patients who had been sitting quietly were nodding. The atmosphere in the clinic had shifted. People no longer felt fear or tension. They felt hope and trust. Dr. Ramesh left the clinic quietly. He felt a mix of anger, embarrassment, and sadness. For years, he had believed his position gave him power, but now he realized that neglect and pride could not protect him. Outside the building, he paused and looked at the clinic one last time. Inside, he had lost the respect of patients and staff alike. Back in the ward, Mira rested on her bed. She could hear soft voices outside and felt a sense of peace. She had faced a moment of fear that morning, but now she felt safe. For her, the kindness she received was more important than any words or actions of authority. Dr. Neal came in again to check on her. "Mother, how are you feeling now?" "I feel calm," Myra replied. "I think I can rest properly now. Thank you for helping me when I needed it the most." Dr. Neal smiled. "It is my duty, and I am glad you feel safe. Remember, you must take care of yourself and rest." As the day went on, the clinic began to return to normal. Patients were being attended to with care and attention. The staff worked with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that every action mattered. Even small gestures of kindness could make a big difference in someone's life. Later, Mr. Arjun checked on the waiting room once more. He saw patients leaving with smiles, talking positively about the clinic. Some even thanked the staff for handling the situation well. He knew that one incident had changed the culture of the clinic for the better. For Mira, the day had been long, but it ended with relief and hope. She realized that courage and persistence mattered. By asking for help and refusing to give up, she had received the care she deserved. Her story had inspired others and reminded everyone that compassion could change lives. By the evening, the clinic was quieter. Mira rested peacefully. Dr. Neal had finished his rounds, and Mr. Arjun reflected on the lessons learned. One patient's need had reminded everyone that medicine is not just about treatment, but also about care, respect, and humanity. The clinic was quiet in the early evening. The sun was slowly setting, casting a warm glow through the windows. Mira lay on her bed in the special ward, feeling much stronger than she had in the morning. Her chest pain had eased, her heartbeat was steadier, and she felt calm knowing she was in good hands. Dr. Neal entered the room with a gentle smile. "Mother, you look much better today. Your test results are good. With rest and proper care, you will soon return to full strength." Myra's eyes brightened. "Thank you, son. Today, you gave me hope. I was afraid earlier, but now I feel safe." Dr. Neal placed a hand lightly on hers. "It is my duty, Mother. Every patient deserves respect, attention, and care. I'm glad you feel better." Outside the ward, the atmosphere in the clinic had changed completely. The incident with Dr. Ramesh had become a turning point. Staff members walked with renewed energy, speaking to patients kindly and listening carefully to their concerns. The waiting room, which had been tense earlier, now felt welcoming. Patients smiled, relieved to know they would be treated with care. Mr. Arjun, the clinic manager, moved through the corridors, checking on both patients and staff. He stopped at the reception desk and spoke to the receptionist. "Make sure everyone is comfortable. Encourage the staff to listen and help patiently. Today showed us that small acts of kindness create trust and respect." The receptionist nodded. "Yes, sir. Everyone understands now. Patients are already asking for Dr. Neal, and they are very happy with the care." Meanwhile, patients continued to leave the clinic with smiles and gratitude. Some stopped to thank the staff personally. A young man said, "I came here worried for my mother, but seeing how this clinic handled the situation gives me confidence. It feels good to know someone truly cares." Another woman added, "Experience is important, but kindness is what makes a doctor worthy." Dr. Neal showed that today. In the staff room, nurses whispered about how the morning had changed everything. They spoke about the courage of Mira, the prompt action of Dr. Neal, and the wise decision of Mr. Arjun. For them, the day had been a lesson in humility, patience, and compassion. Dr. Ramesh had left the clinic earlier, but his absence was a reminder to everyone. Authority without care is empty. Years of experience mean little if a patient's needs are ignored. The staff reflected on this quietly, understanding the value of treating people with respect. Regardless of age or health condition, back in the ward, Myra rested peacefully. She looked out of the window at the evening sky and felt gratitude in her heart. The day had begun with fear and disappointment, but it ended with comfort and hope. She had experienced the difference between neglect and care, and it had reminded her that speaking up for oneself could lead to positive change. Dr. Neal returned to check her vitals one last time for the day. "Mother, you are strong. You handled the situation bravely. Your courage helped us act quickly." Myra smiled softly. "It is not only my courage, son. It is your kindness and everyone's help here that gave me strength. Thank you for listening and acting so quickly." Dr. Neal nodded humbly. Every patient matters. Today was a reminder for all of us. Compassion is as important as knowledge. As the sun set completely, the clinic quieted down. Patients had left, the staff had finished their rounds, and Myra rested comfortably in her bed. The events of the day had changed the lives of everyone in the clinic. It was no longer just a place to treat illnesses. It was a place where care, respect, and humanity mattered more than anything. Mr. Arjun walked through the corridors one last time. He looked at the empty waiting room and smiled. Today had been a turning point. The clinic had learned an important lesson. True healing begins not only with medicine, but also with kindness, attention, and listening with the heart. For Myra, it was a day of hope. For Dr. Neal, it was a day of purpose. And for the clinic, it was the beginning of a new era where compassion led every step.